Hey guys, this is Frank Yecker, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
Hey, this is Rich Franklin.
What's up, everybody? This is Chris Lieben.
This is Diego Sanchez, Randy Couture,
Alistair Overeem.
Hi, this is Stephen Bonner.
This is Don Fry.
Hey, I'm Phil, Mr. Wonderful Davis.
TJ Dillashaw.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Submission Radio. Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Welcome to Submission Radio, episode 176. Dennis Gradov here with Kasper Zlowski. It's the 5th of December, Wednesday here in Melbourne, Australia. Warming up a little bit, as you can tell by the attire. And man, Cass, it is good to be back home after covering UFC Adelaide this past week. There's nothing quite like putting together a proper episode of Submission Radio. And we've got a fun preview for everybody for UFC 231.
Yeah, that's right. Sexy UFC 231 preview featuring Marc Raimondi of MMA Fighting. Is going to be breaking down the lower end of the card, looking at some of these sleeper fights. UFC 231, a great card all around. We got Tommy Toho coming on to get everybody excited in the way that only he can. And then we got Jimmy Smith jumping on the program to do an extensive preview of the main event, Brian Ortega versus Max Holloway, and of course Valentina Shevchenko versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk. So it's gonna be a sexy show. I'm excited.
Yeah, very sexy. Just quickly, a big thank you to everybody who's given us support when it came to our coverage of UFC Adelaide. We know it was a packed and jacked week, 2 UFC cards, 2 massive boxing fights, one here locally with Mundine and Horn, one internationally with Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder, and you guys stuck with us through that week. Checked out our content and sent us some really cool messages through Instagram, through Twitter, through Facebook. We read them all and we respond to them all, so we really appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking some time away from the big fights to sort of check out our coverage and give us your thoughts and opinions. It means a lot. It was a great week in Adelaide. If you guys still haven't checked out the content, there's a lot to go through there. A lot of sneaky fights, a lot of legends picking up wins, guys like Shogun, and then legends leaving the company, guys like Mark Hunt. Some interesting situations happening backstage. And after the presser, of course, the Tai Tuivasa Justin Willis beef is something that's going to live on. And also, a big thank you to Musashi for getting us over there. You guys can see him behind me. They do an amazing job of supporting Submission Radio. Of course, check out their protein bars, their shakes. They're the best in the game, and we look forward to working with them in the future. A big thank you to Ross and the team there. And Cass, during that week, a lot of fantastic coverage from all the fellow media members with us there. So a big thank you to all of them there. Guys like Brendan, guys like James, everybody doing a fantastic job. Fight News Australia. You know, everybody out there doing a fantastic job in Adelaide. But over at the Tyson Fury Deontay Wilder fight, there was a man that was killing it when it came to content. I don't feel like this man has gotten the shout outs, the kudos, the credit that he deserves. He is a friend of the program, Oscar Willis from the Mac Life. Did an absolute fantastic job of covering this Tyson Fury Deontay Wilder fight. He had some fantastic clips that he put online. A lot of them went viral, and I just want to give him a shout out on here. He's an honorary back fist boy. He's a friend of the program, and we were watching his coverage closely. He's done an amazing job. His Twitter is at Oscar Willis. You guys can follow him. He has some of the best humorous tweets out there. And just yesterday, Cass, he put together a spectacular, a fantastic, an amazing video of the point where Deontay Wilder knocks down Tyson Fury and he gets up, the Undertaker moment. He put his own twist on it, a snatch twist to it.
Yes.
And we put that up on our Facebook page unknowingly, nubile, not knowing what we were doing, only to see that thing go viral. It's on 2.4 million views. It's unbelievable.
It was on 1.4 when we started recording like an hour or so ago.
It's unbelievable. We didn't expect it, but everybody out there, the credit goes to Oscar Willis. If you guys like that video, again, jump on Twitter, follow him at Oscar Willis. He runs the Mac Life. They do a fantastic job. And I'm just putting it out here right now, Cass. I'm going to predict it just really, really quickly. I think this guy is very soon going to be one of the big faces out there in the MMA media industry, because his wit and the way he puts stuff together and the guy that he is backstage, he's an absolute magnificent bastard. So make sure to follow him. The guy does an amazing job.
I have to agree with you in everything you said. He asks phenomenal questions in interviews, especially Chuck Liddell and Ortiz. He was there. And just some of the questions sort of thinking outside the box. I know there was so much media coverage, so many, interviews, so many press conferences, and he always found interesting angles, interesting questions to work with. He got Mike Perry even before we had Mike Perry on. He asked him some great questions. So the guy's absolutely phenomenal. Just quickly before we cut to Marc Raimondi and get this UFC 231 preview underway, while we're giving thank yous and shout outs, I want to give a shout out to a man I want to say His name is Darian. We met him after the fights, or I met him after the fights. We were at a fine establishment having some post-UFC Adelaide drinks just to sort of, let off a bit of steam. And I was in a bathroom. I came out to wash my hands. And this, I met this guy and he's like, oh my God, Submission Radio. And we had a really nice chat, and he was kind enough to even get a photo with me. Me, an absolute complete nobody, just a guy that, sits here chatting to fighters, and it's a pretty crazy moment because we're guys who back in the day, before we were media, we would get photos with fighters and pro wrestlers, and at the end of the day, we're just fans of the sport. So to have someone who actually wants to get a photo with someone like myself, like I said, complete nobody, it's a very warm and humbling experience. And he was very thankful, but I wanted to say thank you to him for sort of, I guess giving me a feeling that I never even expected to feel. And a lot of people came up to us during the week and sort of, hey, you're the Submission Radio guys. And it's really nice. We always take the effort to chat to anyone who makes the effort to approach us. We've had run-ins back in the day with, say, fighters or pro wrestlers who you meet and they're your idols, or someone that you've watched for a long time and they're maybe not the nicest. So it's something that we've always sort of kept in mind. If you ever see us, we are the most approachable guys ever. So by all means, come over, say hi. Definitely don't feel like you have to, but if you feel like it, come over. And if we ever do get a photo, tweet us, at us. And Darren, if you're listening, I imagine he is because he said he listens to every single episode, at us at Submission Radio on Twitter, and we'll absolutely retweet it. So just wanted to get that out there. Also, Dennis, I'll give you kudos, man, because this UFC Adelaide, you absolutely smashed it with the social media, putting stuff on Instagram every 2 seconds. I don't know how you do it, man. Every time I looked on there was a new story. So a massive kudos to you as well, bro.
Thank you, man. Well, you smashed it as well. Some fantastic work with the YouTube channel as well. Everybody out there, if you guys still haven't had a chance, do follow us on Twitter, Instagram, like us on Facebook, and of course, check out the YouTube channel and subscribe. A lot of content on the YouTube channel that you guys don't hear on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, and Podcast One. So make sure to jump on, check it out. And Cass, before we go into the guest, just a quick reminder. What do we say? Before we go into the guests, just a quick reminder for people to leave us an iTunes review because we will be reading those reviews. We keep saying it every week. We're going to do it next week. We promise.
It'll happen. It'll happen eventually. Next week, we swear. We swear on it. Skiers promise. Just you mentioned YouTube. I would direct you guys to the exclusives we got with Robert Whittaker and Israel Adesanya sitting on a nice deck overlooking Adelaide. If you haven't checked those out, check those out. Also, we flew in at like 8 in the morning on Monday from Adelaide to Melbourne, and as luck would have it, there was a press conference with Israel, Rob, Calvin Gastelum there as well. There was face-offs. There was, I think as it stands, we are literally the only ones who have that full press conference up on YouTube or anywhere for that matter. So if you haven't checked that out, check it out. Without further ado, UFC 231 preview officially underway. Dennis, I believe our first guest on the line, and you're about to introduce him.
All right, guys. Well, this is a special treat. Our first guest today is the Deputy Managing Editor at MMA Fighting, a friend of the program. You know him from his many previous appearances, and he joins us here to help preview UFC 231. Marc Raimondi, welcome back to Submission Radio. Looking good, man. And look at that Andre the Giant T-shirt behind you. It looks great. The apartment is popping. It's ready for the Christmas holidays.
How my favorite Aussie MMA journalists.
I love how you
right.
say that, even though the options are very slim when it comes to Aussie MMA journalists. But we'll take it. We'll take it, man.
We're the
I
only
don't
one.
want to offend anyone, so I was trying to make it as specific as I possibly could.
Yeah. That's the way we like it. No, dude, we appreciate you coming on. It's always fun. Before we talk UFC 231, got to get your reaction to Fury Wilder and the decision. What a fun fight. The memes that came out of it were just remarkable. But what did you think of the decision itself?
I had it closer than a lot of other people did. I thought it could have possibly been a draw. Of course, I don't know how Wilder won 115-111 on that one judge's scorecard. I think it was Alejandro Roshin. That I don't know, but I could see it being a draw. Although I did feel like Fury was in control of the fight throughout. There were some rounds that were very close in there. There were some rounds that Wilder maybe did some more damage. But overall, I thought it was such a great fight. I thought it was truly an epic heavyweight matchup. And I still have no idea how Fury got up in 12 rounds. I have no idea. I don't know how. We've seen, how many fights have we seen, guys, in MMA and boxing where when someone goes down like that, they don't get up in the way that Fury got up so quickly. It was almost like he shook off like death.
Yeah.
And he jumped back to his feet, and there he was, ready to continue the fight. And man, just unbelievable. What a fight! What a finish! It was one of my favorite boxing fights that I've seen in some time.
Yeah, unbelievable. And I guess it's going to lead into a rematch. But I feel like people are loving boxing lately, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens next. Let's talk about UFC 231, Mark, because there's some fun fights on the undercard that a lot of people might not even realize are happening. I want to talk about Eric Anders and Elias Theodorou first. A fight that kind of snuck under the radar here. Anders lost in his last fight, but I feel like he's gotten a lot of fan support after coming in, filling in, putting in the performance that he did against Santos. What are you expecting from his performance here against Elias? Do you think he could get it done? Because Elias can be pretty tricky at times. He's controlled a lot of his opponents in the past.
Certainly, it's a very interesting fight, and Elias is a guy that he makes a lot of news with his outside the cage stuff, where he's the ring boy for Invicta, and he's on this current quest to get marijuana legalized with USADA and WADA, which I believe is a noble cause. But easy to forget that this guy is a top flight fighter. He's very good at what he does, and Anders is an extremely difficult matchup for him. And I think that the winner of that fight has a big future at 185. I think that the UFC feels like Anders could be that guy, could be a prospect at 185 because he has that football background. We know he's a fantastic athlete. I think overall it's a really good fight and a very important one at 185. But I know that Anders is kind of the guy that people are looking at now. He lost that last fight against Santos, but like you said, it was a very good fight and one where his stock almost rose in that fight. But Theodorou is very tough, and I don't want to call him a gatekeeper in the 185-pound division because he still is young enough to make a rise. But if Anders gets by him, then I think we can say that Anders is, he's legit. He's a guy that can hang with that level.
For sure. Talk to us about Olivier Aubin-Mercier, Mark, because obviously every time he gets a bit of a streak going, his run slows down a little bit with a loss. How much do you think Canadians like this guy? Because at one point he was sort of looked at as a guy who could really make splashes in the division. Do you think he still is that guy, or do you think it's kind of passed him by? I think one of the good things for him is that he's so young. He sort of has a lot of room to grow in a lot of years. Yeah,
and he has got a great mustache. I mean,
right?
And a great nickname, isn't he? The Canadian Gangster or something now? Canadian
Gangster. He has this whole gimmick working for him, and I really dig it. Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that still has a lot of promise, and he went into UFC Calgary against Alexander Hernandez with he was on a 4-fight winning streak, and I was at that card, and that was kind of like his litmus test a little bit in that fight. I felt like if you win 5 in a row in that division in the UFC, okay, you're gonna be somebody, because that's not easy to do. But he ended up losing, the decision, and it really wasn't even that close. It was a one-sided decision. So it'll be really interesting to see how he gets back on track in this fight, because he kind of lost a little bit of his momentum. He'll be at home. He'll be in Canada. I'm sure he'll have a lot of fans there. But it's a very key fight for him, because you don't want to lose 2 in a row, because you lose 2 in a row, that's not far away from being on the bubble for a pink slip. Because usually, if you win 3 in a row, if you lose 3 in a row in the UFC, it could be trouble.
I mean, obviously, it looks like he'll win this one against Gilbert Burns, but who knows what's going to happen? It could be trouble, like he said.
I don't know about this. That. Gilbert Burns is tough, man.
So are you picking are you going controversial here with us, Mark? You're going with the Gilbert Burns prediction on the radio, on the submission radio of all radios?
I don't know, man. It's I don't know who to pick in that fight. It's a tough one. I mean, I feel like Burns is also a guy that's very dangerous. I feel like he's fallen in love with his hands a little bit too much. Like, he's falling in love with that knockout punch. If he goes back to that BJJ background, he can beat a lot of guys. He can beat a lot of guys in that division.
Well, it's going to be fascinating. They were supposed to fight each other before a UFC on Fox 28, but the fight was canceled. So it's going to be interesting. Hopefully everything goes to plan here. We can watch the fight, and we'll see who comes out on top. What about Claudia Gadelha? She's back on the winning side of things, and she's taking on Nina Ansaroff. Ansaroff is in a nice 3-fight win streak, but, I mean, you'd think Claudia is a big step up in competition. Do you think she's got what it takes to beat someone at the level of a Claudia Gadelha?
Yeah, this is a tough fight for Ansarov. It's kind of a test for Ansarov in that case because Gadelha, we've really only seen her at the top of the division. I mean, look at the people that she's fought in her last few fights. They've all been either top 3 or top 5 strawweights, with the exception of Courtney Casey, who is extremely tough in her own right. Gadelha, I still feel she's only always just a win or two away from another title opportunity, especially now that Jędrzejczyk no longer has the belt. Because obviously she lost twice to Jędrzejczyk. Both of them were very good fights, close fights. But now that Joanna is no longer the champion, she's still knocking on that door. She's won the one in a row against Carla Esparza, which was a little bit controversial, which is a very close fight. The question for me coming to this fight is that Gadelha went into the Esparza fight injured. She had a bad knee, and then she further injured it in that fight, and she's turning around relatively soon. I mean, for a knee injury, she didn't have surgery. I think she did have actually surgery, not like a torn ACL, nothing like that, but she had surgery on her knee. She's been at the UFC Performance Institute working on that very hard for the last few months since that fight with Esparza in June. So to me, it'll be interesting to see where she is with that knee injury, and if she's at her best, she's certainly the favorite in the fight against Ansarov. And again, 2019 could be a very big year for her because she can kind of break back into that title picture at strawweight.
Absolutely, and I guess it's a risky one for her because she seems like she's kind of taking this fight just to stay busy, probably make a little bit more money, and it could be great for her. She could get a great win, or if Ansarov pulls the upset, she might sort of find to realize that it was a little bit too early considering that knee wasn't 100%. But also, Jimmy Manuwa fighting on this card. It's pretty crazy. Yeah. He's got Thiago Santos, so this should be an absolute banger, as the kids say. Crazy thing about Jimmy is he's 38 years old, so relatively old. I mean, guys in light heavyweight kind of tend to stick around a little bit longer, but nevertheless, you got to feel like this title run for Jimmy at the moment, it's kind of now or never. But what do you think about this fight itself? Who are you sort of leaning towards in this one?
Yeah, the UFC, it seems, has been putting on the first fight on the main card of pay-per-views, they've been putting the fight they think is going to be an all-action fight, and this one is in that spot for UFC 231, and we understand why, because Manuwa and Santos can both do some pretty impressive things in there, and they both bring it. And I never want to say, like I did one time, I said that there was no way the fight was going to go to decision, and I paid for that with the shoey. So I won't say that for this fight, but I would be surprised.
Which fight was it? Was it Ngannou-Lewis?
That was Derek Lewis versus Ngannou. Yeah. That was.
We all made that mistake, Mark. Don't feel bad. And you did a shoey, did you?
I did a shoey in July. Yeah. How did you guys miss that? It was in that's an Australian tradition.
How silly of us. What was it?
Did someone spit in it, or was it one of these fake shoeys where you just poured it in your own shoe?
Who? Sean Al-Shadi spit in it?
He did.
Oh, my God.
So did Esther.
Oh, wow. Jesus Christ. Respect
Mark,
levels
you're going to have to go to a
right
clinic and get yourself checked out, I'm sorry to say.
I have a few more months left, guys. I'm just going to enjoy these fights while I still have time on the planet.
Are you going to make another shoey bet that this is going to be an absolute banger, or are we staying away from that?
No. Listen, for me to do another shoey bet, it will take something major. And no offense to Jimmy Manuwa and Thiago Santos, but I'm not confident enough to say this fight won't go to decision. I think it'll be a really good fight. I think it'll end in a finish. I don't know which way it'll go, but no shoey bet for me this time. But man, that's gonna be a hell of a fight. And like you guys said, I mean, Manuwa he's on a 2-fight losing streak, but in that 205-pound division, I think that he has the charisma, and he's the type of fighter, an exciting fighter that can get back in that title picture very quickly. And he's got a chance to do that against Santos, and I guess the same goes for Santos. He's moving up to 205, and he can kind of establish himself at 205 against a very good light heavyweight who's been around, who's beaten some good contenders in that division. Remember, it was not too long ago that Daniel Cormier was joined with Jimmy Manuwa as a possible opponent for the title. So again, he's not too far off, and Santos could be in that spot. He can take Manuwa's spot if he wins on Saturday.
And it's great to see sort of talent come back to the light heavyweight division, because it's just an area with so little fighters for us to get excited about that. It's great to see one of these guys possibly making another run for it. Let's talk about Gunnar Nelson, another man making his return, someone that's been sorely missed by the MMA fans. He's taken on Cowboy Oliveira. Now, Cowboy Oliveira has sneakily beaten some of the biggest names in the division. What are you expecting from this return, and do you think there'll be a bit of cage rust that Nelson has to deal with here?
Yeah, that is always a concern because he's been out for quite some time. I mean, he hasn't fought since he fought Ponzinibbio in Glasgow. That was a year and a half ago already. It's been a long time. He's had numerous injuries, but if there is one thing to be, if you're a Gunnar Nelson fan, one thing to be excited about is that have you guys seen the photos that he's been posting?
Oh
on social
yeah,
media?
it's ridiculous.
I mean, he looks in the best shape he's ever looked. I mean, he was never a guy that had like abs, right? Going even on weigh-in day, he was never a guy that was like shredded. The man looks absolutely shredded coming into this fight. So that is so the work has been done. We know that. We know the work has been done. The question is, does it translate into a performance without ring rust? And Oliveira is a guy that is always active. He's a guy is like, I feel like he fights on every third card. I feel like Alex Oliveira is fighting on. It seems like. Anyway, and yeah, he's beaten some tough guys. He is incredibly tough. He has a style that is very difficult to deal with. He's super strong. He's got a great clinch game. I mean, he's only lost to Yancy Medeiros in his last, 7 fights, something like that, 8 fights. So yeah, it's a really good matchup and a very tough one for Gunnar Nelson to come back to. But if you're a fan of Gunnar, you got to see those pictures and be like, all right, our guy is in at least the right preparation for this fight in terms of strength and conditioning. Yeah,
he looks phenomenal. I wonder, at this point, and I guess some of these questions to a degree will be answered this weekend when he comes back, but how far do you think Gunnar can go in this division? What do you think his ceiling is like at this point? Because I feel like he's a guy where there was so many expectations of him, and he's had some phenomenal wins. He's also had some pretty key losses. Do you still see him as a guy that could potentially become a contender in the division at some point? Or just to throw this in there, with rumors of 165 coming in, he could potentially be a contender in that division.
He would be certainly a candidate to move down, but Nelson's been a guy that for a long time has been very adamant against weight cutting. So I'm not sure if he would want to even cut those extra 5 pounds. I don't think it would be that difficult for him, but he's been very, very vocal about weight cutting and how he doesn't want to do it. You know, he probably could be a 55er. There are people in the UFC who walk around heavier than Gunnar Nelson who fight at 155. There's no doubt about that. So that is a bit of a question. I think that we've seen that he does have a little bit of a ceiling at 170. I mean, this division is so stacked. It is really hard to carve out a spot in that elite group of 170ers. It really just is. And it seems like he's hit a little bit of a ceiling now. He lost to Ponzinibbio. That was a first-round knockout, but I know that people will say that he got his eye poked in that fight, which he did. I mean, intentional or not, it did happen. Is that why he lost? No one really knows. He was on a 2-fight winning streak before that. He can certainly beat very tough guys, and his grappling is good enough where he can put a lot of fighters in danger who are elite fighters. But can he make those things work together? It seems like when we see him in fights, he's either grappling in a fight or striking in a fight, and he doesn't really seamlessly transition between the two of those in fights. So it would be nice to see that from Gunnar now. He's 30 years old, so he's not past his athletic prime. He's in his athletic prime, so there's still room there. We'll see. Injuries have been an issue for him, of course, so it's a big question to see where Nelson is at. Certainly, I wouldn't mind going to Iceland for a UFC fight night at some point.
Yes.
That would be a cool experience. So it would be cool if he gets on a winning streak so they can bring the UFC, the entire country would come to Iceland to watch that man fight. I mean, he is wildly popular in that country.
That's right. Oh, Max Holloway in Hawaii. Did somebody say vacation, Mark? I've got my board shorts packed. Let's talk about Joanna Jędrzejczyk taking on Shevchenko in this co-main event for the women's flyweight title. Question marks around Joanna. What's she like? Has she taken too many punches in her career? Is she still the same fighter? When you look at her, what do you see, Mark? Do you still see the same person that was reigning dominantly at strawweight as the champ?
I still see the same person, and she kept her confidence, and she has, I mean, her confidence is unbridled. She's one of the more mentally tough fighters in the UFC. Now, I think that the win against Tecia Torres was very big for her because she was able to get back on track after the 2 losses to Rose Namajunas. Get that win over Tecia Torres. She looked very good in that fight. It was a one-sided affair back at UFC Calgary in July, and I think that was very big for her because now she can, even though she wanted to kind of stay at strawweight and see how the title picture shaped up in that division and maybe get a title shot, I think this is this was inevitable for her to move to 125, and I think it will be ultimately very good for her career to move in weight because those weight cuts are getting really, really difficult for her. She's spoken a lot about the first weight cut against Rose Namajunas back at UFC 217 last year. I mean, she blames that weight cut for the loss. So I am okay with never seeing Joanna go back down to 115 because we know how hard that was for her. And at 125, it's very interesting because we'll see a healthier version of her. We'll see a possibly someone who's obviously not dealing with depletion. She could be more athletic. She could be more agile. She could have a little more power in her punches. We've seen all of those things from fighters who have moved up in weight. Of course, with that being said, she's fighting Valentina Shevchenko, which is going to be a very, very tough matchup for her. Someone who's already beaten her 3 times in Muay Thai. Guys, honestly, this is one of the fights that I'm most looking forward to this final month of the year. Maybe one of the fights I'm looking forward to the most this entire year. I mean, just in all of 2018, because of that background, that story there, where they had this rivalry that's 10 years old. How many fighters, how many matchups can say that, where they've been fighting each other for 10 years, for a decade. They've known each other. They've been in there together. And here they are again, revisiting this old rivalry from Muay Thai again. One person who's trying to win her first title, who's kind of been shut down trying to win titles in other divisions, and another person coming up in weight who was the dominant champion at a lower division. It's and of course, stylistically, I mean, what can you say about these two women? They're two of the best, perhaps, strikers in all of the sport. So it's just phenomenal on so many levels, this fight.
I was going to say, we got Cyborg and Nunes coming up in the end of the year, but other than that, this is one of the highest level women's MMA fights in I mean, arguably ever. You're also Holly Holm, Cyborg comes to mind, but this one's just incredible. Are you leaning any particular way?
In December 2018, sorry to interrupt you, Dennis. We're gonna be having probably the 2 best women's fights in history in this month alone. It's crazy to say that, but I believe it's true.
Yeah. Are you leaning any particular way, Mark? I know this is a really, really tough one to call here. Are you leaning towards anyone?
Yeah, I'm leaning towards Shevchenko, but still so much we don't know about Jędrzejczyk at that weight class. It seems like she's at American Top Team. She's down there. She's been lifting more. She's been putting on some muscle. We just don't know what will she look like with added muscle and not having to just deplete herself to a very dangerous level the day before the fight. How will she look in the fight? I think she'll look better, but will that be enough against Shevchenko, who will probably be a little bit bigger, although I don't think they're that far apart. I don't think they're that far apart in terms of walk-around weight. I think they're probably both in the 130s somewhere, even though Shevchenko fought at 135. She cut no weight for that weight class. So I think Shevchenko will be a little bit bigger. Shevchenko has a little bit of a better clinch game for MMA than I think Joanna has, and probably a better ground game. But I don't know if it'll ever even go there. I think it'll probably stay on the feet. So it'll be really fascinating to see those 2 great strikers go at it in MMA for the first time. I mean, it is. I'm super pumped for that fight. I'm leaning Shevchenko, but I want to see what Joanna looks like all week, and then what she looks like in the octagon before I say for sure.
A great fight and a great main event between Max Holloway and Brian Ortega. As we finish this up, Mark, is Max, in your opinion, making this fight the weight cut? Is it all going to go smoothly? And if it does, what's your prediction for this one?
Yeah, Brian Ortega said at a media launch that I attended yesterday in Los Angeles that he was still concerned about Holloway's health, and I have to be honest, I am too. I really am. It really feels like not so long ago that we were in Las Vegas and Max Holloway was pulling out of that fight for some really scary reasons. I mean, when you hear fighters slurring their words, where they were he had issues with his vision, he was concussion-like symptoms. I mean, some of these things were not good. I mean, we saw interviews with him where he did not look good. He did not sound good. He didn't sound like himself. He sounded slow. He sounded like he was slurring his speech. We saw it. It was in July. It was only a few months ago. And now he's coming back into a fight with Brian Ortega, who is obviously an elite fighter at 145, in this big spot, and trying to make that weight cut again to 145. Now, they say they don't know what the issues were health-wise. And I don't know. I mean, I want to believe that is the case, but it seems to me like that in itself is very scary, right? Where you were in such a state where it looked like concussion-like symptoms in July. People were saying it was a wake-up. People were saying that, that it was indeed a concussion or some kind of head injury. And 5 months later, you don't know what it is, but you're about to get into a fight with Brian Ortega headlining a UFC pay-per-view. It seems like it's too soon. I want to believe it's not. I want to believe that he has a clean bill of health. I want to believe that everything is fine. I really do. I mean, that's all that I want is for Holloway to be okay. But I have concerns about it, and I have concerns about him making this weight cut to 145 pounds. We know how hard these weight cuts are for Holloway. He could not make 155 on a week's notice in April. Could not do that. Can he make 145 with ample notice, given all of the issues that he's had health-wise this year? I don't know the answer to that. I'm going to be watching this entire week with bated breath because I just don't know. My heart goes out to the guy. No one in this game wants to see anything bad happen to Max Holloway. We all want him to be healthy. He is a great champion. He's a great ambassador for the sport. Just a great guy all around. Has a great family. We want to see him healthy and live a great life. But until this fight happens, I'm going to have concerns for his health. And maybe I'm speaking out of turn here, but that's just how I feel. It was scary to see him in July like that. And it feels like it was a very short time ago. Dana White said that week, we're not going to see Max Holloway for a long time in the octagon. And here we are just 5 months later. And here he is. So, again, I hope the best. I want the best. I hope that everything works out. But I have concerns. I'm walking on eggshells this week with this fight.
It's going to be fascinating. And also, what does it do to his confidence going through all this, not knowing what happened to him and going to a fight like that, like you mentioned? And I almost feel like, Mark, this is all a part of the draw. You're buying the pay-per-view, but a lot of people are going to be tuned into that early weigh-in, trying to find out whether or not Max, it's like one of the first little draw things that gets people excited. Okay, is he going to make it? Is he not going to make it? What's going to happen? So I spoke to Dave Shaw.
And that's horrible. It's horrible that the weigh-in is a draw for fans. Like the unknown going to the weigh-ins, it should never be that way. It's ridiculous that that's the case. You're 100% right, but it's just sad that the weigh-in is a huge draw for these UFC fights. It should not. The weight cut shouldn't be so bad that the weigh-in is up for debate. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So obviously, guys, check out MMA Fighting. They do some of the best coverage in the world. UFC 231 on the website. Of course, check out Marc Raimondi, his Twitter. Make sure to give it a follow, Marc_Raimondi. It's going to be a fascinating time this weekend, Mark. Can't wait to see what happens, and thank you so much for getting us even more excited about things to come.
Yeah, and let me just say, great job at UFC Adelaide. You guys really killed it all week with the coverage out in Australia. Good work, gentlemen.
Thank you so much, man. It means a lot. And you guys supported us phenomenally on MMAfighting.com, man. So the love is absolutely mutual, man. Thank you so much.
How could we not? You guys are great. You guys are the best.
Hey, this is Tony Okagui Ferguson, and you guys listen to Submission Radio. Keep tuning in, guys.
What's up, fight fans? I'm the Golden Boy MMA buy rate of mixed martial arts, Tommy Toehold. And UFC 231 is finally upon us. How fucking awesome. There were about 538 cards last weekend that went on for nearly 7 weeks with an amazing heavyweight boxing match that ended in shit because boxing is shit and we should only expect shit from its shitty self at this point. How refreshing then that we would get UFC 231 to cleanse our MMA palate. 2 title fights, 2 of the best fights you could possibly make in MMA right now. Here are 3 reasons you should be watching. Number 1, Gunnar Nelson has figured out that lifting weights is a good thing. He said in a recent interview that he's been lifting weights for this fight. It's the first time he's ever done it in his entire life. I fully expect him to look like fucking Super Shredder on Saturday night. Just full-blown 250 pounds. He may not even make weight. But maybe this is the thing that puts Gunnar Nelson over finally. You've seen him on salads, now see him squatting 450 pounds for reps. It's not like making weight matters anymore anyway. Everybody misses it. So the feature bout of the night might feature a full-blown beast mode Gunnar Nelson against Brazilian Cowboy. And if that doesn't get you excited for this card, maybe these next 2 things will, because I admit that wasn't the strongest point. Reason number 2 you should be hyped. The women's flyweight super fight, Valentina Shevchenko, the de facto flyweight champion, Joanna Violence, the former strawweight champion. 2 badass motherfuckers that like to throw crazy kicks and punches. It's gonna be a throwdown. They've met 3 times in Muay Thai, so there won't be much feeling out process. Just full-on violence from bell to whenever somebody catches a head kick and gets dropped. This is one of the best fights the UFC has ever made in the women's divisions. And once we get a winner, flyweight will be off and running since it started about as well as the release of Fallout 76. This fight is gonna be fucking madness, and I cannot wait for it. Now that is some real hype, but of course, the main event is the hypest hype. Number 1, Max Holloway and Brian Ortega are gonna throw the fuck down, and I cannot wait. Holloway is having one of the best runs in the history of MMA. Ever since he lost to Conor, he's turned into a fucking axe murderer, and he's destroyed Jose Aldo twice, 2 times in a row. The greatest featherweight of all time. He fucked him up and left no doubt that he's the featherweight king, and he's not resting on his throne. This dude just wants the worst fights he can possibly have. How can you not fucking love Max Holloway? And of course, the worst fight he could possibly have is Brian T. City Ortega. It seems like Ortega came out of fucking nowhere, but last year, he puts on a fight of the night against Moicano. He gets a sub in the 3rd. Then he fights Cub Swanson, fight of the night, flying fucking guillotine. Holy shit. Who the fuck is Brian Ortega? Fights Frankie Edgar earlier this year, rips him to shreds, and throws the pieces in Max Holloway's face. Frankie Edgar, the guy who couldn't be knocked out by anything, the guy Gray Maynard knocked out 6 times in a fight, and then he lost to him. Ortega fucking decimated that dude. He's got crazy jiu-jitsu, he's got hands. This is one of the best fights you could possibly make in MMA right now, and we get to see it. We get to watch it with our eyes. I can't fucking wait. What a show this is gonna be. UFC 231 is gonna be the shit. It is a great way to start off a month where we still get a second pay-per-view that's gonna be fucking nuts. MMA is back. What a time to be a cartoon. Those were the 3 reasons you need to be watching UFC 231. I'm Tommy Toehold. Submission Radio is the fucking best. Back to you guys.
This is TJ Dillashaw, UFC champ. Listen to Submission Radio.
Okay, guys, our next guest is known for his excellent analysis as well as his fun commentary style. A former fighter himself, now UFC color commentator and Fox analyst. He is here to help us preview UFC 231. Jimmy Smith. I love saying that name because it means the fun is about to come on Submission Radio. Welcome back to the program. How are you today?
Glad to be back here. You're the only person who enjoys saying Jimmy Smith, man. That is the most boring name you can possibly think of.
We love it, man. Well, okay, here's something that's not boring. Before we talk UFC 31, help us understand something, Jimmy. There is a picture on your Instagram from about a day ago. I'm sure you know exactly which one already. It's got you.
I'm not sure. Not sure which one you're referring to.
Yeah. It's you, Jade Bryce, and Mercedes Terrell in either a bathtub or a hot tub. I mean, it really doesn't matter.
Yes.
Please give us some context. How did this photo come about?
Right. Okay. What happened was we were in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and doing a Bellator show. And Jade, Mercedes, and I used to film these like behind the scenes, like fun little skits and stuff for like in-house for the Bellator people. And I checked in the hotel room, and there's this big giant bathtub in the room of the hotel, not in the bathroom, in the room with the bed are these gigantic bathtubs. And we're like, oh, we have to shoot something in this. So we filmed a bathing safety video, like a public service announcement, and they ended up using it for like the rap party in Bellator, for like the in-house for the people, for the producers and stuff. And it was awesome. So we took that picture while we were filming it, and it's us in a gigantic bathtub. Boom. Wow. There you go. It's my life. It's tough.
Yeah, well, when I saw that photo, Jimmy, I was like, I'm living the wrong life, man. I need to be living the Jimmy Smith lifestyle. It was
oh man, it's crazy. Yeah, it's they're great friends. I love them. Mercedes was at my house a couple days ago for a Christmas party. So yeah, we're good friends. Love them.
That's awesome, man. All right, let's look at UFC 231. Now that we've gotten some clarity on that photo, the important stuff.
Sure.
We can move on to UFC 231. Max Holloway versus Brian Ortega. Massive fight, one that everybody's excited about. We were just talking to Marc Raimondi a second ago. Before we even break down, I guess, the fight itself, what do you think about Max Holloway coming into this fight with so many questions surrounding his health and I guess so little clarity? We've had you on the show before talking about weight cuts. I think with Max's situation, it's a little bit more complicated than that. What do you think about his somewhat quick turnaround?
The hard part is we never got any, like you said, clarity or conclusion about like, oh, it was this, we did that, everything's okay. I mean, Dana talked publicly about, they ran a bunch of tests, couldn't really find out anything. Everything seems fine, but everything seemed fine leading up last time. So this has become kind of the Khabib Ferguson, like, is this really going to happen? A lot of people are like, I don't want to jinx it because everything seemed fine until maybe a day before. So, yeah, I think it's that lack of real declaration of what happened last time that has people confused. We never got an answer about what was wrong. So how do we know it won't happen again? How do we know he's okay? Blah, 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 blah. All these question marks leading in, I think, add another layer to the fight.
It's going to be fascinating just looking at this fight, how it will even start. Ortega's striking has steadily been improving. He's usually able to find some effective counters against Max, though. That's obviously a lot easier said than done. What do you make of Ortega's striking? And if you're him, how would you look to get around Max Holloway's constant lateral movement and elusiveness?
Well, the thing about Max Holloway is, well, Ortega's striking it's improved every single fight. The guy knocked out Frankie Edgar. Let me say it again. Knocked out Frankie Edgar. We thought that was impossible. So his striking has gotten better and better. Max Holloway picks his moments and decides to get Hawaiian, go in there and trade and brawl and bang. He always does. You talk about elusiveness, it's certainly there. But once he decides to go and hit the gas, he wants to brawl. He'll take one to give one. So look for those moments and figure out how to win those exchanges, not be there for those exchanges, be the power puncher in those exchanges, things like that. Because Max will decide to step in and bang at some point.
I was going to say, with Ortega, his forward pressure is always there because he's not afraid to get taken down. And it can lure fighters into potentially making mistakes, like, going for takedowns or leaving themselves exposed for submissions. We saw it kind of wear on Cub Swanson, especially. Do you think it could potentially wear on Max if he has to constantly move backwards round after round, even though Max's cardio has always, seemed fantastic?
Yeah, it could certainly wear him down, especially psychologically. Max is a guy who likes to come forward. He likes to be the bully. He likes to be the one in the exchanges to get the better of his opponent. So there's also the psychological impact of, God, this guy keeps pushing me back. He keeps moving back. He's a big featherweight. I feel like I'm always backpedaling. It's hard to throw off the back foot. He's not a brilliant counter striker. Max Holloway is not the kind of guy to slip and rip and move and really take advantage of a guy who really gives a lot of pressure to you. So stylistically and psychologically, that's a bad matchup for him.
I mean, we all know Ortega likes to snatch up the guillotine. He's very dangerous with it once he does. Do you see any scenario where Ortega can use the clinch to make Max give up his neck and will make Max's height make it a lot harder to pull off a guillotine compared to Ortega's past opponents, in your opinion?
Yeah, it will be. He's not an easy guy to guillotine. And also, he doesn't take those big double leg takedowns that expose the neck. You'd have to bait him into it, maybe hurt him with some body strikes. That's when your height kind of hurts you because you stand a little bit taller, your ribs are exposed, you start attacking the ribs, the guy kind of shells up, that's when you go for the guillotine. So that's the only sequence based on his build and the advantages it presents that I see that guillotine necessarily being a factor is hurt the ribs, get the guy's head down, then snatch the neck, for sure.
The one thing that's interesting and similar and something that I love about both these guys is they really have the heart to put on exciting fights and sort of go into wars. Yeah. They can take a lot of damage and keep fighting. They also seem to both get a lot of their finishes in the third round. It's almost like it sort of takes them a little while to figure out their opponents, and then once they do, they really build momentum and sort of capitalize. Because of that, do you think the fight will be sort of leaning increasingly more towards one fighter by the end of the third round, or do you think it may just be sort of a bit of a war?
Who's been in championship fights before? You always think of who's been there before, who's been in this situation, who has the confidence of experience. In that case, it's Max Holloway. He's the champ. He's used to being in 5-rounders. He's used to training for 5-rounders. He's used to knowing he has a gas for a 5-rounder. I think the longer the fight goes psychologically, assuming, of course, Brian Ortega hasn't, hurt him bad in the first 3 rounds, psychologically, rounds 4 and 5 usually belong to the guy with experience. In this case, it's Max Holloway.
Are there any other X factors that we're missing here, Jimmy? Anything else that you're sort of curious to see regarding either fighter going into this weekend?
Does Max Holloway, how much did the illness, whatever you want to call it, the condition that kept him out of the last fight, how much does that psychologically affect Max Holloway? How much does he think, man, do I want to take this hit? Do I have the gas I normally do? We don't know how camp went, and we don't know how much of a factor his, once again, condition, whatever you want to call it, was in the camp. Were they thinking about it? Was it on his mind? Was he worried about it? Because having that little nugget of, something was wrong with me recently, could that have a psychological impact on this fight? I think that's big. The psychological effect of something physical.
For that reason, who would you say you're leaning towards in this one, Jimmy? If you had to predict.
I'm leaning toward Ortega. I think stylistically it's a good matchup for him. Holloway's been in some wars recently. Ortega, being the less experienced guy, doesn't have the miles on him. And I think maybe in the 4th and 5th round when they start hitting those exchanges and Ortega's a big puncher, he might have a little bit more left than Max Holloway. So I'm leaning toward Ortega in this fight.
Well, let's talk about another banger, as the kids say. Valentina Shevchenko versus Yana Jędrzejczyk, a fight that a lot of people are really looking forward to, a rivalry that's been going on for quite some time. Considering how they're both known for their amazing stand-up, how would you compare Joanna and Valentina's striking? Who would you give the advantage to, Jimmy?
Almost equal, but Shevchenko's bigger. It's very hard to find a clear advantage for Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Meaning, if you say, I think Joanna Jędrzejczyk's a better striker, it's by a millimeter. It's by this, and that. Does it overcome a natural 10, 15-pound weight disparity? That's the question. But these two fighters are very, very similar. I mean, we see more of Shevchenko's ground game, so we think she has the advantage there. Although we haven't seen a lot of Jędrzejczyk's ground game, so maybe it's there, maybe it's not. Their stand-up is very, very similar. They're aggressive. They throw good combinations. They like to move forward. They throw punches and kicks, mix them in very well together. But Shevchenko has a lot of physical advantages. So the heart department is the only one where, if you want to give Jędrzejczyk an advantage, she had more championship fights, I guess. But, Shevchenko stood and traded with Amanda Nunes, who hits like you stole something from her and never backed down. We never saw her break, and she was facing a much naturally bigger opponent. So the chips are stacked, in my opinion, towards Shevchenko in this fight.
I was going to say, how much of a different Joanna do you think we'll see now that she doesn't have to cut all the way down to strawweight? She's got another 10 extra pounds to play with. How do you think that might affect her in this fight?
She might look better in later rounds. Her volume might pick up past round 3. I saw her, at least against Rose Namajunas, I saw some rounds where she was kind of conserving energy a little bit, or she seemed, maybe it was because of Rose, but she seemed a little hesitant to throw. And the next round she would come back and it seemed like somebody who was maybe conserving a little energy, perhaps. 5-round fight. You want to see, do I have enough gas? I don't think that's going to be as much of an issue in this fight. I think she's going to hit the gas and stay pedal to the metal most of the fight. I think that's the difference we're going to see. She doesn't have a gigantic frame. She's not one of those people where I go, man, 15 more pounds or 10 more pounds, she's going to have a lot more muscle. She doesn't have a very big frame. So I think it'll help her cardio. I don't think we'll see a much stronger necessarily Joanna Jędrzejczyk. I think we'll see a lot more gas from her.
And she's looking very happy in her photos leading into this fight. So I think the lifestyle just helps a little bit as well. Considering that Valentina holds 3 victories over Joanna Jędrzejczyk in Muay Thai, how do you think that may affect Joanna mentally going into this fight? As a fighter yourself, Jimmy, how much do you think these psychological aspects play a role in fights and performances? 2
ways to see it. This chick has my number in stand-up. Or this is my chance to erase all those losses. And how you see that mental switch defines fighters. It defines them, okay? And that's what makes a great fighter great is you might beat them 9 times in a row. That just means, man, number 10 is going to mean a whole lot more. Or, God, this guy's beat me 9 times in a row. He just has my number. There's nothing I can do. Great fighters don't think that way. They don't think, man, they beat me 3 times, man, what can I do? They think that 4th time, this one's mine. I'm going to erase all that. That's how Joanna Jędrzejczyk can say it. She's a champion. She's a champion. She's worn gold. She's mentally very, very strong. She's not going to – we didn't see her fold against Rose Namajunas after she knocked her out. So it's going to be one of those things where she's going to come back and go, I'm going to wipe her out and erase all those losses. So psychologically, I don't think it's going to be a hindrance for her. I really don't.
I think it's a really, really fascinating, intriguing fight. Are you leaning towards anyone in this one, Jimmy, if you had to predict?
Shevchenko. I'm leaning towards Shevchenko just because of what I said where, all the tactical things are close. I mean, you look at their striking, they're both, top shelf and they're amazing. And, you can say Shevchenko has a better grounding, but maybe Joanna does too. Maybe she has one. We just haven't seen a whole lot of it. But the size disparity is going to be a big deal. Shevchenko hung with the best in the world at 135 and didn't look out-muscled and out-strength. So she's going to have a big physical advantage at 125.
I mean, there's a whole bunch of really exciting fights on this card. Are there any other fights that are sort of really piquing your interest where you want to see what's going to happen lower down on the card?
Well, this one is the way I can put it myself personally. This is one I get to be a fan. I'm not working a Fox desk on this one. I'm not calling this one. I am just like everyone else, obsessed with Brian Ortega taking on Max Holloway, and I'll tell you why. So many divisions. I just finished calling Kamaru Usman's fight at 170. I've done interviews this week and was like, who's getting the next title shot? They've got Colby Covington. You got, Ponzinibbio look great. This division at 145, these are the top 2 guys, no doubt. No doubt. This is the title fight to make. Number 3 is off the radar. Number 4 is off the radar. And how many times in the UFC can you say that? If you had a fight at 185 right now, Robert Whittaker versus Kelvin Gastelum, it's going to be a great fight, but a lot of people are going to go, I think Jacare deserves that. And Yoel Romero, I think, deserves a rematch. There's going to be a debate. This is one of the few title fights of the past couple years where there's no debate about who should be in there. And it is Max Holloway and it is Brian Ortega. That's why I'm kind of like obsessed with the top of this card.
Jimmy Smith, you should be the face of the ads for the pay-per-view.
Mic drop. I'm out.
You got us so excited. So excited. As we wrap up, I hate it. Can you pick the mic up for just a second? Last couple of questions. Number 1, you did a spectacular job on that Usman fight, and you just brought up the question, so we have to ask it as well. Who do you think deserves the welterweight shot? To us, I mean, it's pretty clear. I think Covington still gets the shot, and then we see what happens. But to you, do you think Usman has done enough to sort of take that shot away from Covington?
I am generally in favor when you give someone an interim title, and I don't want to say give, he earned that title. He dominated Rafael dos Anjos. He deserves the next in-line spot. No matter what you think of him personally, all the things he said and done, all that stuff, he earned that shot. Now, I think Usman is next in line for the winner, and having just gone 5 rounds with a very tough RDA, I mean, I think he's in a good position to wait 6 months and get the winner. I really think this is a great position for Kamaru Usman to be in, but I think it should be Colby Covington versus Tyron Woodley for the title, and I think Kamaru Usman should get the winner.
And what would you say if Covington wins and and Ben Askren wins and you've got this Ben Askren Covington thing going on? Would you see a situation where Askren gets rushed to a title shot in that situation?
I would. Well, if he just wipes out Robbie Lawler, yeah, maybe. Maybe if it's just like if it's a one-sided beatdown. Whoa, like what I call that water cooler moment, where the next day everybody's talking about that. If he has that kind of performance, maybe. But the timing and who's put more time into the UFC favors Kamaru Usman. He's just been in longer. He's paid his dues. I think definitely, whether or not it's Colby Covington winning or whatever the deal is, let that one simmer for a bit. Let them jaw. Let them talk. Colby Covington, if he beats Kamaru Usman, then you talk about Ben Askren. But I think there's a definite linear line here. It's redundant. Linear means line. You go from I went to college. You go from Colby Covington to Kamaru Usman to maybe the winner of Ben Askren, Robbie Lawler, depending on how they look.
And I lied because I said 2 more questions, but this is my last one. Before we let you go, Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder. Did you get a chance to watch it? And what did you think of the outcome? Did you agree with the decision in the end?
I got a chance to check it out. I haven't gotten a chance to sit down and watch the whole thing because one of the things I do, guys, before a fight, I study a lot. So when I did the Kamaru Usman fight, I've been watching fights for 10 days straight at least.
Wow.
And especially with the Ultimate Fighter, I watch all the Ultimate Fighters and everything. And so yeah, when I come home Saturday, I'm like, I'll watch it later. Oh my God, I have this pay-per-view Saturday. Like, okay, like I'll watch this one later. So I'm catching up with the Tyson Fury fight. I've never seen, hardly ever seen so much public opinion on one side of a decision where almost everyone who saw it thinks Tyson Fury won the fight. I mean, 1 or 2 people even believe it's a draw. But the idea that one judge had 7 rounds for Wilder is lunacy. It's like you want to shake him and go, what fight are you looking at? Like, what are you watching? Because obviously one judge scored a draw, one scored for Tyson Fury, but I mean, Max Kellerman said, if you tried to give Wilder a draw, maybe I could see it. 7 rounds is lunacy. And so that's what bothers me is when one card is just so far out there that, it defies logic. That's where we are right now. And it's unfortunate because the guy fought his heart out.
I know. Well, I mean, even though it's pretty dodgy, at least we get to see the rematch. That's going to be fun as well. The memes that are going to come from that are going to be even more amazing. And I feel you on the fights, man. That weekend was crazy. We had Mundine and Horn here in Australia. We were literally covering UFC Adelaide. Mark Hunt was fighting Justin Willis as that fight was going on. So it was a pretty funny scene in the back. Yeah. You did a phenomenal job over the weekend, man. Thank you so much for jumping on with us and previewing UFC 231. Always a lot of fun. Don't forget to follow the man on Twitter at Jimmy Smith MMA and, of course, Instagram at JSmithMMA. Always fun chatting with you, Jimmy. Thank you.
You're awesome, guys. Appreciate you.
All right, guys, and there you go, UFC 231 preview show under wraps, under the belt. Thank you so much for tuning in. We loved having you guys back in our studio, back on the show, back watching us do our thing. It's great to be back here. Another big episode of Submission Radio is coming at you next week. With that, enjoy the fights this weekend, and we'll see you guys next week.